At my college graduation dinner, surrounded by family at the fanciest steakhouse in town, Grandpa Walter raised his champagne glass. "Ansel, my boy, how are you enjoying the $850,000 education fund I set up for you?" The room froze. I stared at him, confused. "What fund, Grandpa?" My Aunt Margaret's fork clattered onto her plate. Mom's face drained of all color. Dad's hand trembled around his wine glass. Grandpa's smile vanished. "The trust fund I created when you were born. The bank says it's been steadily withdrawn." The silence that followed felt like it stretched for hours, though it was probably only seconds. Grandpa Walter reached into his suit jacket with the deliberate motion of a man who had planned this moment carefully. He pulled out a thick manila envelope and placed it on the white tablecloth between the wine glasses and bread plates. 22 years ago, he began, his voice steady but carrying an edge I'd never heard before. "When you were born, Ansel, I set up an education trust fund, $850,000, meant to give you every opportunity in life. The best schools, tutoring, study abroad programs, graduate school without worry." He opened the envelope and spread out bank statements across the table, like dealing cards in a game where everyone had already lost. "These are the withdrawal records. Started right when you turned 18. His finger traced down columns of numbers that made my head spin. 50,000 here, 75,000 there, all signed for as educational expenses. I felt like I was drowning in the middle of that fancy restaurant. My mind raced back through the past 4 years, the overnight shifts at the warehouse that left me too exhausted to study properly, the second job at the coffee shop where I'd do homework between customers, the third job tutoring high school kids on weekends when my classmates were at parties, the $120,000 in student loans that would follow me for the next 20 years. "Grandpa, I don't understand," I managed to say, my voice cracking. "I've been working 3 jobs since freshman year. I have student loans that will take me decades to pay off. I lived on ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches. I couldn't afford textbooks half the time and had to borrow them from the library." Mom started crying, quiet tears rolling down her cheeks and ruining her makeup. Dad cleared his throat repeatedly, his face red. "Walter, there must be some mistake. The bank probably has the wrong records or something." Grandpa's eyes narrowed. "Richard, I've been in business for 50 years. I don't make mistakes with money, and neither does First National Bank." He pulled out another document, "Especially when every withdrawal has your signature, and Patricia's as the trust's custodians." My stomach turned. I looked at my parents, really looked at them. Mom wore a designer dress I'd never seen before, diamond earrings catching the light. Dad's watch was new too, a Rolex I definitely hadn't seen at Christmas. When had they gotten these things? How had they afforded them on their supposed middle-class incomes? "You knew," I said, the words coming out barely above a whisper. "You both knew there was money for my education, and you let me struggle. You watched me come home exhausted every night. You saw me stress about making rent. You listened to me worry about how I'd pay for textbooks." Aunt Margaret spoke up for the first time, her voice sharp. "Patricia, that dress you wore to the charity gala last month, you said Richard got a bonus at work, but the hardware store has been struggling, hasn't it?" Uncle Thomas, who'd been silent until now, set down his scotch. "What's really going on here?" Grandpa pulled out his phone and showed me something that made my blood run cold. My LinkedIn profile, showing all my jobs, my graduation with honors despite working full-time, the recommendations from professors praising my dedication despite my challenging circumstances. "I hired someone to look into things after I saw this," Grandpa said. "A private investigator, because I couldn't understand why my grandson was working himself to death when I'd made sure he'd never have to worry about education costs." Dad stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You hired someone to spy on us? Your own family?" "Sit down, Richard," Grandpa commanded, and surprisingly, Dad did. "The investigator found some very interesting things, like how your hardware store hasn't turned a profit in 5 years, like how you've been making trips to Atlantic City every weekend, like how there's a floating poker game in the back room of what should be your store's warehouse." The words hit like physical blows. I felt Claire, my girlfriend who'd just arrived for dessert, take my hand under the table. She was in law school, and I could see her processing everything with that sharp legal mind of hers. "You gambled with my education fund?" I asked. My voice stronger now, anger starting to replace shock. Dad's face crumpled. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. It was just a few hands at first. I was going to double the money, make it even better for you." "A few hands?" Grandpa laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Richard, my investigator says you've been running an illegal gambling operation for 5 years. The hardware store is just a front. You've been using your son's future as your bankroll." The other diners were starting to stare. Our family drama was becoming dinner theater for the whole restaurant. Emma, my 16-year-old sister, looked between our parents with wide, frightened eyes. "Mom? Dad? What's happening?" I thought about all the times Emma had gotten new things while I'd made do with second-hand everything. The private tutors she had while I struggled alone. The promise of a car for her 17th birthday while I still took the bus. It all made 6 cents now. "How much?" I asked, my voice flat. "How much of my $850,000 did you steal?" The word hung in the air like a blade. Steal. That's what this was. Not borrowing, not mistaking, not misunderstanding. Theft. From their own son. Mom finally spoke, her voice barely audible. "We were going to pay it back. Every penny. Richard had a system. He said he couldn't lose." "Every gambler says that, Patricia," Aunt Margaret said coldly. "How much is left?" "Nothing," Dad admitted, and the word hit me like a physical blow. "It's all gone." The word nothing echoed in my head like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. $850,000. Gone. Evaporated into poker chips and bad bets while I'd been sleeping 3 hours a night trying to keep up with work and school. Aunt Margaret stood up, her jewelry catching the light as she moved. I knew something was wrong. "Patricia, when you showed up at the country club with that new Hermes bag, claiming Richard's business was doing well, I wondered. When you enrolled Emma in that $30,000 a year private school while Ansel was working at a warehouse, I wondered more." "You don't understand," Mom said, her mascara running in black streams. "We didn't mean for it to go this far." "How far did you mean for it to go?" I asked. "When you took the first 1,000, the first 10,000? When you watched me skip meals to save money?" Emma was crying now too, but they were different tears than Mom's. "That money you've been spending on me," she said slowly, "my private school, my tutors, my dance classes, it was all Ansel's money?" Dad tried to reach for her, but she pulled away. "Sweetheart, we were providing for our family. By stealing from your son." Grandpa's voice boomed across the restaurant. Several servers had stopped what they were doing, frozen in place by the unfolding drama. Uncle Thomas, who'd been a prosecutor for the state for 15 years, had been unusually quiet. Now he spoke with the careful precision of someone who'd seen too many family crimes. "Richard, Patricia, what you're describing isn't just family drama, it's criminal fraud, embezzlement. As custodians of that trust, you had a fiduciary duty." "Don't talk to me about duty," Dad snapped. "Where was family duty when Father made his fortune and lorded it over everyone? Where was duty when he made us all dance for his approval?" "So you stole from your son out of spite?" I asked, standing up now. Claire stood with me, her hand still in mine, steady and supportive. "We borrowed it," Mom insisted. "Richard had investment opportunities." "Gambling isn't an investment, Mom." The words exploded out of me. I ate peanut butter for dinner for 3 years straight. I wore the same pair of shoes until they literally fell apart. I missed spring break trips, study abroad programs, internships I couldn't afford to take because they were unpaid. Aunt Jennifer, Dad's sister, tried to play peacemaker. "Maybe we should discuss this somewhere private." "No," I said firmly. They had 4 years to discuss this privately with me. 4 years to come clean. Instead, they watched me struggle every single day and said nothing. Emma pulled something out of her purse, her hands shaking. "I found these last week," she said, spreading out casino receipts and betting slips on the table. They were in Dad's office at home. I was looking for printer paper and found a whole box of them. I picked one up. The date was from 7 years ago, 3 years before they'd touched the education fund. You were gambling before you stole from me, I said, the realization hitting hard. You had a problem, and when your own money ran out, you turned to mine. Dad's face went white. Emma, you had no right to go through my things. Like you had no right to go through Ansel's future? She shot back. Claire, who'd been silent until now, spoke up in her clear professional voice. Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell, as a law student, I should inform you that what you've admitted to constitutes multiple felonies. The amount involved makes this a federal crime. Are you threatening us? Mom asked. I'm stating facts, Claire replied calmly. Facts that any prosecutor would find very interesting. Grandpa pulled out more papers. These are the forensic accounting reports. $850,000 withdrawn over 4 years. But that's not all, is it, Richard? Dad's silence was answer enough. The investigator found interesting payments, Grandpa continued. Regular transfers to someone named Derek at the bank. Patricia's cousin, I believe? Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. You bribed a bank employee? Uncle Thomas asked, his prosecutor instincts fully engaged now. To do what? Falsify documents? The manager of the restaurant approached our table nervously. Excuse me, but I'm going to have to ask you to keep your voices down or leave. You're disturbing other guests. Grandpa stood, pulling out his wallet. We'll take this conversation elsewhere. The check, please. Where exactly did my money go? I demanded. Not ready to let this go. I want a full accounting. Every dollar. Dad looked at Mom, some silent communication passing between them. The gambling debts were about $400,000, Dad finally admitted. The rest went to maintaining our lifestyle. Your lifestyle, I corrected. While I was choosing between textbooks and food, and paying Derek, Mom added quietly. He wanted a percentage to keep quiet about the irregularities. How much? Grandpa asked. $50,000 so far. He wants more. Claire was typing notes into her phone, documenting everything. This is conspiracy, money laundering, bribery, fraud. You're looking at 15 to 20 years if prosecuted. Emma stood up suddenly. I can't breathe. I need air. She ran toward the exit, and I followed her, finding her sobbing on a bench outside. My whole life is a lie, she said between sobs. Everything they gave me was stolen from you. I sat next to her, my anger at our parents not extending to her. You didn't know, but I benefited. I got everything while you got nothing. I'm so sorry, Ansel. You're 16. This isn't your fault. She looked up at me with red eyes. What's going to happen to us? Before I could answer, the rest of the family came outside. Dad was on his phone, his face pale and frightened. I understand, he was saying. Yes, tonight. I'll have it. He hung up and looked at Grandpa. We have a problem. A bigger problem. Bigger than stealing $850,000 from your son? Grandpa asked sarcastically. The people I owe money to. They're not patient men. They want $200,000 by midnight or things get unpleasant. You owe money to criminals too? I asked, incredulous. On top of everything else? Victor Torino, Dad said, and Uncle Thomas went rigid. The Victor Torino? The one who runs half the illegal gambling on the East Coast? Dad nodded miserably. I got in deep. Used the house as collateral without telling Patricia. Mom's scream could probably be heard 3 blocks away. You put our house up? Where are we supposed to live? There won't be a house to worry about if Victor doesn't get his money, Dad said. I looked at this man who was supposed to be my father, who was supposed to protect and provide for me, and felt nothing but disgust. So you stole my entire future and it still wasn't enough? I'm going to fix this, Dad said desperately. I just need time. You had 4 years, I said. Time's up. Back inside the restaurant, in a private dining room the manager had quickly arranged for us, the full scope of my parents' betrayal began to unfold like a map of devastation. Grandpa demanded they account for every dollar, and what came out was worse than any of us had imagined. $400,000 to gambling debts, Dad admitted, his voice hollow. But that's not the whole story. The games I was in, they weren't just friendly poker nights. They were run by serious people. When you lose, you pay, or they make you pay in other ways. What other ways? Uncle Thomas asked, though from his expression, he already knew. They make you hold games yourself. Bring in new players, fresh money. Dad's hands shook as he spoke. The hardware store became a front. Every weekend, there's a game in the back warehouse. I get a percentage, but most goes to paying down what I owe. You turned our family business into a criminal enterprise? Grandpa's voice was deadly quiet, which was somehow worse than when he yelled. It was that, or lose everything, Dad said. You did lose everything, I shouted. You lost my trust, my respect, my future. Mom jumped in, trying to defend the indefensible. We used $300,000 to maintain appearances, the house payments, the cars, Emma's school, the country club membership. We couldn't let people know we were struggling. So you'd rather steal from your son than admit you were living beyond your means? Aunt Margaret asked. And the other $150,000? Grandpa pressed. Mom and Dad exchanged another look. Derek, my cousin at the bank. He discovered the discrepancies in the trust fund withdrawals, threatened to report it unless we paid him. He's been blackmailing you? Claire asked, her legal mind already working through the implications. $25,000 every few months, Mom admitted. He says if we stop paying, he'll not only report the fraud but make it look like we forged even more documents. He has copies of everything, Dad added. Signature cards, withdrawal slips, even recordings of phone calls where we discussed accessing the funds. Uncle Thomas had been taking notes on a napkin, and now he set down his pen with a heavy sigh. This isn't just fraud anymore. This is a federal conspiracy involving bank fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, extortion, running illegal gambling operations, and God knows what else. The FBI would have a field day with this. You can't turn us in, Mom pleaded. We're family. Family? I laughed bitterly. Family doesn't steal $850,000 from their own son. Family doesn't watch their child work themselves into exhaustion while spending his money on designer clothes and country club memberships. Emma had been quiet since we came back inside, but now she spoke up. There's more. Tell them about the man who came to the house last week. Dad's face went even paler, if that was possible. What man? Grandpa demanded. One of Victor's collectors, Emma said. He came when Mom and Dad weren't home, said to tell them they had 1 week to pay or things would escalate. He knew my name, my school, my schedule. They threatened your daughter, and you're still sitting here pretending this is manageable. I asked, incredulous. We're handling it, Dad insisted. By stealing more money? From whom this time? Emma's college fund? Oh wait, you probably never set one up for her either, planning to steal from whatever Grandpa might give her too. Emma's face crumbled as she realized the truth in my words. Claire stood up, pulling out her phone. We need to call the police. Now. This is beyond family drama. There are active threats against minors. No, Dad practically shouted. Victor has connections everywhere. Police, judges, prosecutors. You call them, and we're dead before morning. Then what exactly is your plan? I demanded. Because from where I'm standing, you've destroyed everything and have no way to fix it. Grandpa had been increasingly quiet, thinking, and now he spoke with authority. First, we get Emma somewhere safe. She's staying with me tonight. Second, we deal with this Victor situation. Third, we address the criminal charges. How do we deal with Victor? Dad asked desperately. I don't have $200,000. No, you had $850,000 of Ansel's dollars and squandered them all, Grandpa reminded him coldly. But Victor doesn't know the trust is empty, does he? A calculating look crossed Dad's face. No, he doesn't. Don't even think about it, I said. You're not using my name or my connection to Grandpa to get out of this, but if we could convince him that you're willing to pay, Dad started. Absolutely not. I stood up, ready to leave. You've taken everything from me. You're not taking my integrity, too. Uncle Thomas cleared his throat. Actually, Ansel, there might be a way to use this situation to everyone's advantage. If we could get Victor on tape admitting to the illegal gambling, the extortion, the threats, we'd have enough to put him away. You want to use me as bait? I want to use their desperation as an opportunity, Thomas corrected. Think about it. You're the only one here with clean hands. You didn't know about the money. You're the victim. If you approached Victor claiming you just found out about an inheritance and wanted to help your family despite everything, he'd believe it. That's insane, Claire said. You're asking him to meet with a dangerous criminal. With full police backup, Thomas said. I have connections to a federal task force that's been trying to nail Victor for years. This could be their way in. I looked around the table at my fractured family. My parents who'd betrayed me, my sister who'd benefited unknowingly from their theft, my grandfather whose gift had been squandered, my aunts and uncles torn between loyalty and justice. There's something else, I said slowly, a memory surfacing. Last month, when I was at the house looking for my birth certificate for a job application, I saw Dad's laptop open. There was a recording program running. Dad, have you been recording your conversations? Dad's guilty expression told me everything. You've been recording, Victor? Uncle Thomas asked, leaning forward intently. Insurance, Dad mumbled. In case things went bad. Where are these recordings? Cloud storage. Hidden account. Thomas pulled out his phone immediately. We need those recordings now. If they contain what I think they do, we might have enough to take down his entire operation without putting Ansel at risk. But before Dad could provide the account information, his phone rang. The caller ID showed Victor's name. Dad's hand shook as he answered, putting it on speaker at Thomas's gesture. Richard. Victor's smooth voice filled the room. I hear you're having a family dinner at Chez Laurent. How nice. I hope you're discussing my money. Victor, I told you, midnight. Plans change. You see, one of my associates at the bank tells me there've been some interesting inquiries about a certain trust fund. Seems it's emptier than a politician's promises. Which makes me wonder how you're planning to pay me. We all froze. Derek had sold us out to both sides. However, Victor continued, I understand your boy just graduated. Smart kid from what I hear. Works hard. I respect that. So here's my new offer. The boy comes to work for me. His earning potential against your debt. We'll call it an internship. The blood drained from my face. He wanted me to work off my parents' debt in his criminal organization. That's not happening, I said loudly enough for him to hear. Ah, the graduate himself. Ansel, isn't it? Your parents have told me so much about you. Well, not directly, but people talk when they owe money. Here's the thing, son. Your parents' debt is now your problem. Family debts are family problems in my world. I'm not your son, and I'm not joining your world. Victor laughed. Brave words for someone whose little sister goes to Preston Prep. Pretty campus, very open, not much security. Emma grabbed my hand, terrified. You stay away from her, I growled. Then let's discuss alternatives. 1 hour. Warehouse District, Building 47. Come alone, or don't come at all. And if you don't come, well, I'll have to collect payment another way. The line went dead. We're calling the FBI right now, Uncle Thomas said, already dialing. No, Dad said. He'll kill us all. He'll kill you anyway if he doesn't get paid, Thomas shot back. This is our only chance. As the family erupted in arguments about what to do, I made a decision. I looked at Claire, then at Emma, then at Grandpa. I'll go, I said quietly. The room exploded in protests, but I raised my hand. But I go on my terms. Uncle Thomas, make your calls. Get your task force ready. Dad, get me those recordings now. And Grandpa, I need you to do something for me. Anything, he said immediately. I need you to make sure that no matter what happens tonight, Emma is safe and provided for. She's innocent in all this. Grandpa nodded solemnly. You have my word. I turned to my parents. This is me cleaning up your mess one last time. After tonight, we're done. You're strangers to me. Mom sobbed, but I felt nothing. They'd stolen more than money. They'd stolen my ability to trust, to feel safe, to believe in family. But tonight, I was taking control back. As we prepared to leave the restaurant, Dad's phone buzzed with a text. His face went white as he read it, and his hands started shaking so badly he nearly dropped the device. They're here, he whispered. Victor's men. In the parking lot. Uncle Thomas immediately went into prosecutor mode, his voice commanding. Nobody leaves through the main entrance. Is there another exit? The restaurant manager, who'd been hovering nervously, nodded. The kitchen has a delivery exit to the alley. We can't all run, Grandpa said firmly. That'll just make things worse. Another text came through. Dad read it aloud. 200,000 or the house burns tonight, with or without people in it. He's escalating, Claire said, her law school training kicking in. This is conspiracy to commit arson, terroristic threats. This is Victor showing he means business, Dad corrected, and for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. Not the embarrassment of being caught or the shame of exposure, but genuine terror. Mom suddenly gasped. The house documents. Richard, tell me you didn't. Dad couldn't meet her eyes. You put the house up as collateral without telling me? Mom's voice rose to a shriek. That's fraud. I'm on that deed too. I forged your signature, Dad admitted. I was desperate. The hits just kept coming. Every confession revealed another layer of criminality, another betrayal. So let me get this straight, I said, my voice dangerously calm. You stole my entire education fund, bribed a bank official, ran illegal gambling operations, put our family home up as collateral to a mobster, forged Mom's signature on legal documents, and now we have armed criminals in the parking lot. Did I miss anything? Don't forget the recordings, Emma said quietly. Dad has recordings of everything. That's when Aunt Margaret stood up, smoothing down her dress with practiced calm. I think it's time I made a phone call. Margaret, this isn't the time for your society connections, Mom snapped. Margaret smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. Patricia, you always did underestimate me. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number from memory. This is Agent Margaret Willis. Authorization, code 7 Alpha 9. I need an immediate response team at Chez Laurent restaurant. We have a situation involving the Torino organization. The room went dead silent. Agent? Dad stammered. Margaret hung up and faced the family. FBI. I've been undercover for 6 months investigating Victor's organization. The country club membership, the charity galas, all of it was cover to get close to the wives and girlfriends of his associates. You're a Fed? Mom asked, incredulous. Have been for 15 years. The ditzy society wife routine was just that, a routine. She turned to me. Ansel, I'm sorry you got caught up in this. Your graduation dinner was supposed to be a celebration, not a sting operation. Wait, Grandpa said slowly. You knew about the missing money? I suspected. When Richard started showing up at the same events as Victor's money men, when Patricia suddenly had expensive tastes their supposed income couldn't support, I started investigating. I contacted Walter last week with my suspicions, which is why he brought the bank statements tonight. You set us up? Dad accused. You set yourself up when you stole from your son. Margaret shot back. I just made sure there'd be witnesses and documentation. Claire grabbed my arm. Ansel, this changes everything. With an FBI agent involved, you don't have to meet Victor. Actually, he does, Margaret said, but not alone and not unprotected. This is the opportunity we've been waiting for. Victor's never this exposed, never this desperate. He's making mistakes. Another text arrived, this time with a photo. It showed our house from the street, with a red gas can visible in the foreground. The message read, 1 hour, TikTok. Emma started crying again, and even I felt my resolve wavering. This was beyond family drama now. This was life and death. Here's what's going to happen, Margaret said, taking charge. Ansel, you're going to wear a wire. You'll go to the meeting, but my team will be positioned around the warehouse. The moment we have enough evidence, or if there's any danger, we move in. What about the house? Mom asked. We have agents moving to secure it now, Margaret assured her. Victor's crew there is about to have a very bad night. Uncle Thomas had been on his phone, and now he looked up. I've been in touch with the federal prosecutor's office. They've been building a RICO case against Victor for 3 years. This could be the break they need. And my parents? I asked. What happens to them? Margaret's expression softened slightly. That depends on their cooperation. The gambling, the theft, the fraud, those are serious charges. But if they testify against Victor and Derek, provide those recordings Dad mentioned, they might avoid prison. Might? Mom wailed. You stole $850,000, Margaret reminded her. That's not a parking ticket. Dad had been silent, but now he spoke up. The recordings. They're not just of Victor. I recorded everyone. Other players, cops on his payroll, even city officials who came to games. Thomas's eyes lit up. That's gold. That could bring down the entire organization. It could also get us killed, Dad pointed out. You're already on that list, Margaret said bluntly. Your only way out is through. Grandpa, who'd been processing all of this, finally spoke. Margaret, how long have you known about the trust fund theft? Suspected for 2 months. Confirmed last week when I accessed the bank records through a federal warrant, she admitted. I'm sorry, Walter. I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't blow my cover. And Claire? I asked, suddenly suspicious of everyone. Are you an agent too? Claire looked genuinely hurt. No, I'm exactly who I said I am. Your girlfriend who happens to be in law school and is now watching her boyfriend's life turn into a crime thriller. A crime thriller where I'm the bait, I said bitterly. The hero, Margaret corrected. You're the only innocent person in this mess. That makes you the hero. Another round of texts came through, these to multiple phones. Victor was escalating, sending messages to Mom, Emma, even Grandpa. He's panicking, Margaret observed. That's good. Panicked criminals make mistakes. Panicked criminals also kill people, Dad pointed out. Margaret pulled me aside while the others argued about next steps. Ansel, I need you to understand something. Your parents are going to face consequences regardless. But how this ends, whether more people get hurt, whether Emma stays safe, that depends on what happens in the next hour. So no pressure, I said sarcastically. I know this isn't fair. None of it is. But you have a chance to turn your parents' crimes into something positive, to take down a major criminal organization, to protect other families from what yours went through. I looked over at Emma, young and terrified, her whole world crumbling. At Claire, steady and supportive, despite being dragged into this nightmare. At Grandpa, whose generosity had been perverted into criminality. At my parents, who'd chosen greed and addiction over their own children. I'll do it, I said. But I have conditions. Name them. Emma goes with Grandpa immediately. Somewhere safe, somewhere Victor can't find her. Done. Claire stays here with federal protection. Agreed. And my parents tell me everything. No more lies, no more secrets. Every crime, every debt, every person involved. Margaret nodded. We'll need that for the investigation anyway. I walked back to the group. Dad, give me access to those recordings now. Dad pulled out his phone, his fingers fumbling with the password. The account is under a fake name, Michael Stevens. As he transferred access to Margaret and Thomas, I saw the file list. Hundreds of recordings over 5 years. My father had been documenting his own descent into criminality, creating evidence of his destruction of our family. There's something else, Dad said quietly. Victor doesn't just run gambling. The warehouse where he wants to meet, it's also where he stores other things. Drugs, weapons, stolen goods. You knew this and still got involved with him? I asked, disgusted. I didn't know at first. By the time I found out, I was in too deep. Margaret was typing rapidly on her phone. This changes our approach. If that warehouse is what you say, we need a full tactical team. She looked at me. Are you sure about this? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Unknown number. Answer it, Margaret instructed. On speaker. Hello? Ansel. Victor's voice was smooth, controlled. I hear you're having quite the family discussion. Your Aunt Margaret is very interesting, by the way. Did you know she had lunch with my associate's wife last week? Margaret went rigid. He knew who she was. Here's what's going to happen, Victor continued. You're coming alone. No wires, no backup, no federal agents. Just you and your family's debt. If I see anyone else, if I even suspect anyone else, your sister's school has a gas leak tomorrow. Your grandfather's house has an electrical fire. Your girlfriend has a tragic accident. Do you understand? I understand, I said through gritted teeth. Good boy. 45 minutes. Don't be late. The line went dead. He made me, Margaret said grimly. This just got a lot more complicated. We're calling it off, Claire said immediately. It's too dangerous. If we call it off, he follows through on his threats, I pointed out. Not if we arrest him first, Thomas suggested. On what grounds? Threatening phone calls he'll claim never happened? Margaret shook her head. He's too smart for that. I made a decision that I knew would change everything. I'm still going. But we do it my way. Everyone started protesting at once, but I held up my hand. Victor thinks he has all the cards, but he doesn't know about Dad's recordings. He doesn't know I have nothing left to lose. And he doesn't know that sometimes the best way to catch a predator is to let him think he's won. I turned to Margaret. How fast can you get those recordings authenticated and uploaded to your servers? 20 minutes, maybe less. Do it. Thomas, can you get state police to Emma's school and Grandpa's house without making it obvious? Already on it, he said, dialing. Claire, I need you to do something that might save all our lives. Anything, she said immediately. Your father's a federal judge, right? Can he issue an emergency warrant? Claire's eyes widened as she understood. For the warehouse, if we have probable cause. Which Dad's recordings provide, Margaret added, catching on. We could have teams in place before you even arrive. But Victor will see them, Dad protested. No, I said, he won't. Because they'll already be inside. The private dining room became a war room as I laid out my plan. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the victim of my parents' choices. I was taking control. Victor expects me to come alone and desperate, I began. So that's what he'll see. A recent graduate who just learned about family money trying to save his parents despite everything they've done. But you'll be wired, Margaret insisted. No, I won't. He'll check for that. But what he won't check for is this. I pulled out my phone and showed them an app I'd downloaded months ago for recording lectures. It uploads directly to the cloud in real time. Completely invisible. Just a phone in my pocket. That's not admissible in court, Uncle Thomas pointed out. It doesn't need to be. Dad's recordings are admissible. Mine just need to give you real-time intelligence and probable cause to move in. Claire was already on the phone with her father. Dad, I need an emergency warrant. Yes, now. I'll explain later. Margaret was coordinating with her team. I need surveillance on Warehouse 47, but stay invisible. Suspects believe the meeting is one-on-one. Dad pulled me aside, and for the first time all night, I saw genuine remorse in his eyes. Ansel, I know I have no right to ask, but please be careful. I've already destroyed your past. Don't let me destroy your future too. You don't get to play concerned father now, I said coldly. You had 4 years to be concerned when I was working myself to death. I know I failed you. But those recordings, there's something you need to know. Victor's not just a gambling boss. He's connected to things much worse. Human trafficking, weapons dealing. There are recordings of him discussing murders. My blood chilled. And you kept dealing with him? I tried to get out. That's when the threats started. When he found out about the trust fund through Derek, he saw it as his golden ticket. Derek, I said, remembering. He's the key to this. He's playing both sides. Margaret overheard. We have agents picking him up now. He'll crack under pressure. Bankers always do. Emma came over and hugged me tightly. Please don't go. We can figure out another way. There is no other way, Em. But I promise you, after tonight, you'll be safe. Grandpa will take care of you. Grandpa nodded firmly. Emma's under my protection now. I've already called my security team. She'll be at my estate within the hour. What about MIT? Emma asked. Will I still be able to go to college? That's my concern now, Grandpa said. Your education won't be held hostage to your parents' crimes. I felt a pang watching Emma get the protection and support I should have had. But I pushed it aside. This wasn't about me anymore. It was about stopping a cycle of destruction. Margaret returned from her phone calls. We have a problem. My surveillance team just reported that Victor has at least 15 men at the warehouse. This isn't just a meeting. It's an ambush. He never intended to let me leave, I said, understanding dawning. He plans to use you as leverage to get more money from Walter, Thomas realized. Kidnapping, extortion. He's going all in. Then we need to be smarter, I said. Dad, in your recordings, Is there anything about corrupt cops? Dad nodded, pulling up files on his phone. Detective Ray Morrison, Sergeant Paul Banks, Lieutenant Michael Torres. They're all on Victor's payroll. Send those files to Margaret now, I ordered. If they're part of the ambush, we need them arrested simultaneously. Margaret's expression grew impressed. You're thinking like an agent. I'm thinking like someone who's been underestimated his whole life, I corrected. Claire's father had come through with the warrant. We have authorization to search the warehouse and arrest anyone inside engaged in criminal activity. How long until your teams are in place? I asked Margaret. 15 minutes for external positions. But getting inside without detection, that's harder. What if they were already inside when Victor's men arrived? I suggested. The warehouse has been closed since 5, Dad said. Victor's people would have swept it. The adjacent buildings? I asked. Margaret's eyes lit up. The warehouse shares walls with 2 other buildings. If we could get teams inside those, do it, I said. Have them ready to breach through the walls if necessary. Uncle Thomas was staring at me with something like pride. You should have been a prosecutor. I wanted to be an engineer, I said bitterly. Before my parents stole my dreams, Mom had been crying quietly in the corner, but now she spoke up. Ansel, I know you'll never forgive us, but please, let us help somehow. You want to help? Give Margaret everything. Every crime you've committed, every person involved, every detail you remember. Your full cooperation is the only thing that might keep you out of prison. What about the house? She asked. The house you put up as collateral with a forged signature? I laughed bitterly. That house is gone either way. My phone buzzed. Victor again. 30 minutes, boy. Don't keep me waiting. He's getting impatient, Margaret observed. That's good. Impatient people make mistakes. I looked around the room at my fractured family, my supportive girlfriend, the FBI agent who'd been hiding in plain sight. Whatever happens tonight, I want you all to know something. I'm not doing this for any of you. I'm doing it for every other kid whose parents might gamble away their future. For every family Victor has destroyed. For Emma, so she doesn't grow up under this shadow. You're doing it because it's the right thing, Claire said softly. That too, I admitted. Margaret handed me a business card. This has a panic word. If you say, thunderstorm, in any context, we move in immediately. What if he finds it? Tell him it's your lawyer's card. Claire can verify that. I pocketed it, then turned to Dad. The recordings of Victor discussing murders. Give me the details. Dad pulled up a file. 3 months ago, he was drunk, bragging about handling a problem in Newark, a bookie who was skimming. He described it in detail. Send that file to Margaret Priority 1, I said. If we can link him to that murder, he's done. As everyone prepared for what was to come, I found myself standing next to Grandpa. He put his hand on my shoulder, the weight of it comforting. Your father was right about one thing, he said quietly. I did make my children compete for my approval. I thought it would make them strong. Instead, it made Richard desperate and reckless. This isn't your fault, Grandpa. No, but I could have done better. With you, I will do better. When this is over, we're going to make sure you get the education you deserve, the life you've earned. If I survive tonight, you will, he said firmly. You're stronger than your father ever was. You've already proven that by standing up to all of this. 25 minutes until the meeting. Margaret's teams were moving into position. Claire was coordinating with her father and the federal prosecutor's office. Thomas was ensuring state police were ready to protect Emma and Grandpa's properties. My parents were spilling their crimes to federal agents, trying to buy leniency with information. And I was preparing to walk into a trap, hoping that my plan would turn it into Victor's downfall instead of my own. It's time, Margaret announced. Ansel, are you ready? I thought about the 4 years of struggle, the 3 jobs, the sleepless nights, the dreams deferred. I thought about Emma's fear and Grandpa's disappointment. I thought about the $850,000 that had vanished into poker chips and bad bets. I've been ready my whole life, I said. I just didn't know it until now. As I headed for the door, Claire caught my arm. Come back to me, she whispered. I will, I promised. And when I do, we're starting fresh. No more secrets, no more lies, just us. She kissed me, quick but intense. Go be a hero. I walked out of the restaurant into the cool night air. Somewhere in the darkness, federal agents were watching. Somewhere across town, Victor was waiting with his trap. And somewhere in the cloud, hundreds of hours of recordings were about to bring down an empire of crime. My parents had stolen my past. But tonight, I was taking back my future. The warehouse district at night looked like something out of a crime movie, which I guess made sense since I was walking into one. Broken streetlights created pools of darkness between industrial buildings, and the sound of distant traffic barely penetrated the maze of concrete and steel. My phone showed 11:37 p.m., 23 minutes until Victor's deadline. I parked my beat-up Honda Civic, the one I'd bought with warehouse wages because my parents were too busy spending my education fund to help me get reliable transportation. The Warehouse 47 loomed ahead, a massive structure that seemed to swallow light. I could feel eyes on me, whether Victor's men or Margaret's agents, I couldn't tell. My phone recording app was running, uploading everything to the cloud. In my pocket, Margaret's business card felt like a lifeline. One word: thunderstorm, and federal agents would storm the building. But I needed more than just safety. I needed justice. The main door was open, yellow light spilling out into the darkness. I walked in, my footsteps echoing in the vast space. The warehouse was filled with shipping containers, creating a maze of metal corridors, perfect for an ambush, but also perfect for hiding federal agents. Ansel Mitchell. Victor Torino's voice came from deeper in the warehouse. The graduate. Come forward, slowly. I walked through the maze of containers until I reached an open area set up like an office. Victor sat behind a desk that looked absurdly out of place in the industrial setting. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with expensive clothes and cold eyes. 5 men stood around him, all armed. No wire, I said, raising my arms. Check if you want. One of his men did, thoroughly and professionally. They didn't find the phone recording because they weren't looking for that. Everyone records everything on phones these days. It's just white noise. Sit, Victor commanded, pointing to a chair across from his desk. Your father owes me 200,000. Your grandfather has millions. You see my dilemma? My grandfather's money isn't my father's, I said. Or mine. But that education fund was yours, wasn't it? $850,000. Gone. Poof. Into your daddy's gambling addiction. How do you know about that? Victor smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Derek at the bank. Useful man. Tells me things. Like how the fund is empty, but Grandpa Walter is worth 30 million. 30 million he'll never give to you. Not to me. But to save his grandson? That's different. I understood then. This wasn't about Dad's 200,000 debt. This was a kidnapping. You're going to hold me for ransom. Such an ugly word. I prefer to think of it as aggressive debt negotiation. My grandfather will go to the FBI. With his grandson's life at stake? I doubt it. Victor stood up, walking around the desk. Besides, the FBI can't do much when half their informants work for me. Like Agent Margaret Willis? Victor's smile widened. Ah, yes, your aunt. Did you know she had lunch with my accountant's wife last week? Asking questions about charity donations. Very subtle. Too bad my accountant's wife is smarter than she looks. So you knew she was FBI? For 3 months now. We've been feeding her just enough real information to keep her interested, not enough to matter. My blood chilled. Had Margaret walked me into a trap, or was Victor bluffing? But let's talk about you, Victor continued. 22 years old. Graduated summa cum laude, despite working 3 jobs. Computer science major, with a minor in accounting. Impressive. You've done your homework. I have a proposition. Your father's debt, it's insignificant. The real prize is your skill set. Work for me, and I'll forget his debt. I'm not a criminal. Neither was your father, until he was. Neither was Derek, until he needed money. Everyone has a price, Ansel. What makes you think mine is 200,000? Not 200,000. Freedom. Your family's safety. Your sister goes to a nice school, very open campus. Your girlfriend, Claire, she walks to her apartment alone most nights. Your grandfather, despite his wealth, has predictable routines. The threats were clear but careful. Nothing explicitly violent, nothing that couldn't be explained away as observations. You're threatening everyone I care about? I'm explaining reality. Your family entered my world when your father sat down at his first game. There's no walking away from that. I stood up, anger overcoming fear. Yes, there is. My father's debt is his problem. I didn't sign anything, didn't agree to anything. Sit down, Victor said quietly, and his men shifted their positions slightly. Your father offered the house as collateral. Your mother's name is on that deed. Funny thing about forged signatures, they become real when the alternative is your husband going to prison. She'll testify that she didn't sign. Will she? When doing so means your father goes away for fraud on top of everything else? When it means she loses the house anyway and goes to prison as an accomplice? He had thought this through, every angle covered, or so he thought. What exactly do you want from me? I asked. Your skills. I run games, but the real money is in the digital age. Online gambling, cryptocurrency, untraceable transactions. I need someone who understands both computers and money. You want me to launder money. I want you to modernize my operations. In exchange, your family debt disappears, and everyone stays safe. And if I refuse? Victor pulled out his phone, showing me security camera footage. It was Emma leaving her school that afternoon. Accidents happen. Gas leaks, car crashes, random violence. The world is dangerous. That's when I decided to push things. You know what's funny? My dad recorded everything. Victor's expression didn't change, but his men tensed. Excuse me? 5 years of recordings. Every game, every conversation, every threat. He was building insurance in case you ever turned on him. You're bluffing. I pulled out my phone, making sure to keep it visible and non-threatening. May I? Victor nodded, and I played a recording Dad had sent me. Victor's voice filled the warehouse, discussing the murder in Newark, describing in detail how he'd handled the bookie who'd skimmed. Now Victor's expression changed. Where are the rest? Somewhere safe. Here's my counter-proposal. You forget my family exists, and those recordings stay buried. Or I could just hurt you until you tell me where they are. You could, but I've already sent them to someone with instructions to release them if I don't check in by midnight. I glanced at my phone. That's in 18 minutes. It was a partial truth. Margaret had the recordings, but Victor didn't know that. You're not that smart, college boy. No? How do you think I survived 4 years working 3 jobs while maintaining a perfect GPA? I plan ahead. Victor stood up, pacing now. Those recordings could hurt a lot of people, not just me. Cops, politicians, businessmen, important people who won't appreciate exposure. Then you'd better make sure nothing happens to me or my family. That's when one of Victor's men interrupted. Boss, we've got movement outside, multiple vehicles. Victor's eyes narrowed at me. You brought friends? I came alone, just like you asked. He grabbed me by the collar. If this is a setup, it's not, I said, then added, at least not mine. That's when the lights went out. In the darkness, I heard Margaret's voice through a megaphone. FBI, this is a raid. Everyone freeze. The lights came back on, emergency power kicking in. But something was wrong. Instead of federal agents flooding in, Victor's men were taking defensive positions. They'd been ready for this. Did you really think I didn't know? Victor laughed. Your aunt's been under surveillance for weeks. We knew this was coming. But then Dad walked in. Not alone, but with Derek from the bank and 3 men I didn't recognize. My father, the gambling addict who'd destroyed my future, walked right into the middle of the standoff. Hello, Victor, Dad said calmly. We need to talk. Victor looked genuinely surprised. Richard? What are you doing here? Fixing my mistakes, Dad replied. Derek, tell him. Derek, looking terrified, spoke up. The recordings aren't the only thing. Richard's been working with the state police for 2 months. The games at the hardware store, they were all recorded by law enforcement. You're lying, Victor said. Every player, every bet, every threat, Dad continued. I made a deal. Full cooperation in exchange for immunity. I stared at my father in shock. He'd been an informant? You set me up? Victor asked, his voice dangerous. You threatened my family, Dad replied. My son worked 3 jobs because of my mistakes. My daughter lives in fear because of my debts. My wife cries herself to sleep because of my failures. So yes, I set you up. Victor pulled a gun, pointing it at Dad. You're dead. That's when Emma appeared. My 16-year-old sister walked out from behind a container, holding Grandpa's hand, and behind them, the real surprise, Judge Harrison, Claire's father, flanked by federal marshals. Mr. Torino, Judge Harrison announced, I have warrants for your arrest on charges of racketeering, extortion, conspiracy to commit murder, and 37 other federal crimes. You can't be here, Victor said. This is illegal. Actually, the judge replied, this warehouse is now federal property, seized as part of an asset forfeiture based on evidence of criminal enterprise. You're technically trespassing. Victor looked around, calculating. His men were outnumbered, but not outgunned. This could still go very badly. That's when Grandpa played his card. Victor, you should know that I own the company that holds the mortgage on your mother's nursing home, the one where she's getting excellent care for her dementia. Victor went rigid. You wouldn't. I'm a businessman, Grandpa said coldly. I protect my investments. My grandson is my most valuable investment. Surrender now, and your mother continues getting the best care money can buy. Force a shootout where my family could get hurt, and she's on the street by morning. It was ruthless, the kind of move that had made Grandpa his fortune. And it worked. Victor lowered his gun. You win this round. No, I said, stepping forward. We won everything. Your organization is done. Your corrupt cops are being arrested as we speak. Derek has already agreed to testify about the bank fraud. And those recordings? They're not just evidence. They're your confession. As federal agents moved in to arrest Victor and his men, my father approached me. Ansel, I know you hate me. I don't hate you, I said truthfully. I nothing you. You're just someone who stole from me. But you did one thing right tonight. I've been trying to make it right for months, he said quietly. The FBI approached me after I made the recordings, offered me a deal. I took it to protect you and Emma. Don't pretend this was noble. You were saving yourself, maybe. But I was also trying to be the father I should have been 4 years ago. Margaret appeared, no longer the society aunt but the federal agent. Ansel, you did beautifully. The recording you made tonight adds to our case. You knew Dad was an informant? For the last 6 weeks. We needed Victor to make his move. Your graduation dinner was the perfect catalyst. So everyone was playing everyone, I said, exhausted suddenly. Welcome to the real world, she said, not unkindly. But you navigated it like a pro. Ever consider a career in law enforcement? I just want to finish my actual education, I replied. Emma ran over and hugged me. You were amazing, like something out of a movie. It's not over yet, I warned. There's still the trials, the testimony. But we're safe? She asked. I looked around at the warehouse, now swarming with federal agents, at Victor in handcuffs, at Dad talking to prosecutors, at Grandpa arranging something on his phone. Yeah, Em, we're safe. 3 months later, I sat in a federal courthouse in downtown Philadelphia, watching as Victor Torino was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The murder in Newark, combined with racketeering, extortion, and dozens of other charges, had sealed his fate. His entire organization had crumbled like a house of cards, taking down corrupt cops, dirty politicians, and crooked businessmen across 3 states. Dad sat 2 rows behind me. He'd kept his immunity deal by testifying in 15 separate trials, his 5 years of recordings providing the evidence needed to convict almost everyone involved in Victor's network. He looked older, grayed by the weight of what he'd done and what he'd lost. We hadn't spoken since the night at the warehouse, and I wasn't ready to change that. Mom had pled guilty to lesser charges of fraud and conspiracy, receiving 5 years probation and 1,500 hours of community service. She'd moved in with her sister in Ohio, unable to face the shame of staying in Philadelphia where everyone knew what they'd done. The house was gone, sold to pay partial restitution to the trust fund, though it barely made a dent in what they'd stolen. Derek, the corrupt bank manager, got 7 years in federal prison and would never work in finance again. His testimony about how my parents had approached him, desperate and willing to pay, had been particularly damaging to their reputations. But today wasn't about them. It was about justice finally being served. After the sentencing, I walked out of the courthouse into bright September sunshine. Claire was waiting for me on the steps, having just passed her bar exam the week before. She'd been my rock through everything, attending every trial, helping me understand the legal proceedings, and reminding me that not all family betrays you because she was becoming my chosen family. "How do you feel?" she asked, taking my hand. "Free," I said simply. "For the first time in my life, actually free." Grandpa's town car pulled up, and we climbed in. He'd insisted on taking us to lunch to celebrate the end of the trials. As we drove through the city, I thought about how much had changed. Grandpa had established a new trust fund for me, this one with multiple oversight requirements and transparency measures that would make theft impossible. He'd paid off my student loans and funded my return to school for my master's degree in computer science, with a focus on financial security systems. I'd become obsessed with creating technology that could prevent what had happened to me from happening to others. Emma was thriving at a boarding school in Connecticut, far from the shadow of our parents' crimes. Grandpa had taken over as her legal guardian, and she video called me every Sunday to tell me about her classes, her friends, her normal teenage life that she'd never had before. She was healing, slowly but surely. At the restaurant, Grandpa raised his glass of wine. "To second chances and hard-won justice. To family we choose," I added, looking at Claire. "To the future," Claire contributed. We clinked glasses, and Grandpa set down his with a businesslike expression. "Now, Ansel, we need to discuss your nonprofit idea." Over the past 3 months, I'd been developing a plan for a foundation that would help families affected by gambling addiction, particularly children whose education, funds, or futures had been compromised by their parents' addiction. I wanted to call it the Second Chance Foundation. "I've reviewed your proposal," Grandpa continued. "It's ambitious, but necessary. I'm prepared to provide the initial funding, $5 million to start." "Grandpa, that's too much." "It's not enough," he countered. "Do you know how many families are destroyed by gambling addiction every year? How many kids lose their college funds, their homes, their futures? You're not the only one, Ansel. You're just one of the few who fought back and won." He was right. During the trials, I'd met dozens of Victor's victims, families destroyed by gambling debts, children whose futures had been mortgaged for their parents' addiction. My story had made the news, and I'd received hundreds of emails from kids in similar situations, desperate for help. "I want to hire Dad," I said suddenly, surprising everyone including myself. Claire nearly choked on her water. "What?" "Hear me out," I continued. "He knows the gambling world inside and out. He knows how addicts think, how they rationalize, how they hide their problems. Who better to help identify families at risk? Who better to counsel addicts on the real cost of their choices?" Grandpa studied me carefully. "You're considering forgiving him?" "No," I said firmly. "I'm considering using him. He owes a debt that money can't repay. This is how he pays it. Every family he helps, every kid whose education he saves, that's partial payment on what he stole from me." "What about your mother?" Claire asked gently. She made her choices. She could have stopped him, could have told me, could have done 1,000 things differently. She chose to enable him and benefit from the theft. That's on her. After lunch, I had one more stop to make. The federal detention center where one person was still awaiting sentencing. Aunt Margaret, or rather Agent Margaret Willis, sat across from me in the visiting room. She'd been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into whether she'd violated procedures by not immediately reporting the trust fund theft when she discovered it. "You look good," she said. "Recovery suits you. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for months. "Would you have believed me? Your parents had been lying to you for 4 years. If I'd approached you claiming to be FBI, claiming your parents were criminals, what would you have done?" She had a point. I would have thought it was insane. "Besides," she continued, We needed Victor to make his move. Your graduation was the catalyst. Everything had to happen naturally for the case to stick. You used my pain as bait. I used your strength as a weapon, she corrected. Ansel, you did something most people couldn't. You stood up to your parents, to a mobster, to an entire criminal organization. You did it with intelligence, courage, and integrity. That's not being bait. That's being a hero. I don't feel like a hero. Heroes rarely do. But think about it. Because of your actions, Victor's organization is destroyed. Dozens of corrupt officials are in prison. Hundreds of families are free from his extortion. And your foundation will help thousands more. That's a legacy worth having. As I left the detention center, my phone rang. It was Emma. Ansel, guess what? I got the lead in the school play. Can you come see it? Wouldn't miss it, I promised. Is Claire coming too? If she can take time off from her new job. Claire had just started at the district attorney's office, inspired by the trials to pursue prosecution of financial crimes. What about Mom and Dad? Emma asked, her voice smaller. Dad's in treatment, Em. Inpatient rehab for gambling addiction. Mom's in Ohio. They can't come. I know. I just sometimes wish things were different. Me too, I admitted. But we can't change the past. We can only build a better future. That evening, Claire and I sat in my new apartment, one I'd bought with legitimate money from my restored trust fund. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, earned honestly. We were going through applications for the Second Chance Foundation's first round of grants. This one, Claire said, showing me a letter from a 17-year-old whose father had gambled away her college savings. She has perfect grades but no way to pay for school. Approved, I said immediately. Full ride, plus living expenses. We'd already approved 15 similar applications. Kids whose futures had been stolen by their parents' addiction, given a second chance by someone who understood their pain. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, then saw the first line. This is your father. I hadn't given him my new number, but somehow he'd gotten it. The message continued. I'm 90 days clean today. I know it doesn't matter to you, but I wanted you to know. I'm trying to become someone who deserves to be your father again, even if I never get the chance. I stared at the message for a long time, then deleted it. Maybe someday I'd be ready to hear his apologies, but not today. Today was about building something new, not reconciling with the past. Claire noticed my expression. Your dad? Yeah. You okay? I will be, I said, and meant it. The next morning, I stood in front of a room full of high school students in North Philadelphia, kids from the same kind of working-class neighborhood where I'd grown up. They'd invited me to speak after hearing about my story on the news. My parents stole $850,000 from me, I began, and the room was instantly silent. They gambled it away while I worked 3 jobs to pay for college. And the worst part? They watched me struggle every day and said nothing. I told them the whole story, the betrayal, the revelation, the sting operation, the trials. But more importantly, I told them about rising above it, about refusing to let someone else's choices define their future. Some of you might be dealing with similar situations, I said. Parents with addiction, families keeping secrets, futures being mortgaged for present mistakes. I'm here to tell you that it's not your fault, and it's not your responsibility to fix them, but it is your responsibility to fight for your own future. After the talk, a girl approached me, tears in her eyes. My mom's been taking money from my college account. I didn't know what to do. I gave her my card, the one for the Second Chance Foundation. Call us. We'll help. As I drove home, I thought about the journey from that graduation dinner to now. The pain hadn't disappeared, might never fully disappear, but it had transformed into purpose. Every kid we helped, every family we saved from the cycle of addiction and theft, that was my revenge against the chaos my parents had created. 6 months after the trials ended, the Second Chance Foundation had helped 200 families, provided 50 full scholarships, and funded counseling for over 300 gambling addicts and their children. We'd partnered with schools to identify at-risk kids, with banks to flag suspicious trust fund activity, and with law enforcement to prosecute financial crimes against minors. Claire and I got engaged on the 1-year anniversary of my graduation at the same restaurant where everything had fallen apart. It seemed fitting to reclaim that space with something beautiful. Grandpa walked me down the aisle since my father had lost that privilege, and Emma was Claire's maid of honor. During the reception, Uncle Thomas, now a federal prosecutor after his success with the Victor case, pulled me aside. "The FBI wants to offer you a job. Financial Crimes Division. Your work identifying the patterns in Victor's organization was brilliant." "Thanks, but no," I said. "I've got my own mission." Dad sent a card. No return address, just a simple message. "I'm proud of who you've become despite me." I kept the card. The first thing from him I hadn't immediately thrown away. Mom didn't reach out at all. I heard through family that she'd remarried, some businessman in Ohio who didn't know about her past. She was pretending it had never happened, that she'd never had a son whose future she'd helped steal. That was fine. She was a stranger to me now. The Second Chance Foundation grew beyond anything I'd imagined. Tech billionaires who'd grown up with addicted parents donated millions. Congress invited me to testify about financial crimes against minors, and 3 states passed Ansell's law requiring multiple signatures and oversight for education trusts. But the real victory came in small moments. Emma graduating high school with honors, headed to MIT on a full scholarship from Grandpa. Claire successfully prosecuting a parent who'd stolen their child's identity for gambling debts. A kid from the foundation sending me his college acceptance letter with, "Thank you for believing in my future," when my parents didn't written on it. One day, 5 years after that graduation dinner, I received a call from an unexpected source, the federal prison where Dad was serving his sentence. Not for the crimes against me, he'd gotten immunity for those, but for tax evasion related to the illegal gambling operation. 3 years, minimum security. "Your father's requested you for his approved visitor list," the administrator said. "You're under no obligation to accept." I thought about it for a week, discussing it with Claire, with Emma, with my therapist. Finally, I decided to go, not for him but for me. He looked older, grayer, smaller somehow in his prison uniform. We sat across from each other at a metal table, observed by guards who probably knew our whole story. "Thank you for coming," he started. "I'm not here for you," I said clearly. "I'm here for me, to say what I need to say." He nodded, waiting. "You stole more than money," I began. "You stole my trust in family, my belief that parents protect their children, my ability to accept help without suspicion. You watched me suffer and chose your addiction over my well-being every single day for 4 years. I know, but you also inadvertently gave me something. You gave me strength I didn't know I had, purpose I wouldn't have found, the ability to help thousands of kids avoid what I went through. So I don't forgive you, but I do thank you for making me who I am." "I follow the Foundation's work," he said quietly. "Every kid you help is a reminder of what I took from you. Good. Live with that. Make it drive you to be better." I stood to leave, then turned back. "Emma asks about you sometimes. When you get out, if you stay clean, maybe we can discuss supervised visits with her. Maybe." Hope flickered in his eyes. "I'll earn it. We'll see." As I walked out of the prison into bright sunshine, I felt the last chains of my past fall away. The story that had started with betrayal and theft had become one of triumph and purpose. $850,000 had been stolen from me, but what I'd built in response was worth infinitely more. The Second Chance Foundation now operates in all 50 states. We've helped over 10,000 families, provided millions in scholarships, and successfully lobbied for federal protection of education trusts. Every year on my graduation anniversary, we hold a gala raising money for kids whose parents chose addiction over their futures. And every year, I tell my story again, not as a victim but as a survivor, not as someone who lost everything but as someone who found their purpose in the ruins of betrayal, because that's the ultimate revenge against those who try to steal your future. You build a better one anyway, and then you help others do the same. What would you do if you discovered your parents had stolen your entire future? Would you seek revenge, justice, or redemption? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story moved you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel for more powerful true stories, and share this with someone who needs to hear that betrayal doesn't have to define your destiny. Thank you for listening to my journey from betrayal to triumph. Remember, your past may shape you, but it doesn't have to limit you. Sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as the deepest wounds. Until next time, keep fighting for your future, no matter who tries to steal it from you.